Hey there, it's me. Welcome to my channel where we tell the stories that shaped the world from the ground up. And today, we read going back to the 1910s in the era of the automobile, where the competition is heating up and one automaker in particular is driving towards success. Since the early 1900s, the automotive industry has been in an arms race of innovation, each manufacturer trying to outdo each other. And no company embodied this more than the Dodge brothers. With their straight, honest designs that were built tough, they were becoming the vehicle of choice for police departments and taxi companies all over the country. See, up until then, car manufacturers were stuck in a rut, limiting production to just 15 to 20 units per day. That all changed with the advent of the moving assembly line. Take Oldsmobile, for example. They upped the price of their cars to fund new research, but customers didn't seem too happy about it. On the other hand, Ford held firm on their prices, but it meant cutting corners in areas like safety. While Buick was celebrating their success, a dark cloud was forming on the horizon. They launched an aggressive campaign targeting Buick's biggest strength, its reputation for quality. They claimed that Buick was sacrificing safety for profit and that their cars were more prone to accidents. It was a bold move, but it seemed to be working. Some customers started to question Buick's commitment to quality. They launched a new campaign targeting the wealthy elite, positioning their vehicles as symbols of luxury and status. What strategies did they employ to overcome the challenges posed by the Great Depression? Well, let me tell you, these companies were no strangers to hardship. They rolled out a new plan called Purchase Plan, which allowed customers to buy new cars for as little as $5 a month. This unlikely alliance forged in the fires of adversity proved to be a winning strategy. They expanded their reach, capturing a larger share of the market than ever before, but their success didn't come easy. They faced skepticism from industry veterans who questioned their methods and doubted their motives. However, they pressed on, driven by a shared purpose to revolutionize the automotive industry, and boy, did they do that. They shattered expectations and proved that even in the toughest of times, innovation and adaptability can pave the way for success. It was a revolutionary concept that shook the automotive world to its core. If you want to keep riding with us, click the bell icon to stay notified on all our latest content. Until next time, see you later, but that's not all. They also made a strategic move to boost consumer confidence. GM executives personally guaranteed the quality of their vehicles with their own money. If that doesn't scream confidence, I don't know what does. It was a bold move, but it paid off in spades. People flocked to GM showrooms, eager to take advantage of these innovative financing plans. They had faced their fair share of economic downturns and come out on top. But this time was different. The Great Depression was the worst economic crisis in modern history. And even the titans of industry were feeling the heat. It was a bold gamble, but it paid off in a big way. Their sales figures soared, signaling a bright future ahead. But they weren't the only ones to capitalize on this trend. General Motors wasn't far behind. They rolled out a new campaign of their own, emphasizing the luxury and comfort of their vehicles. It was a subtle shift, but it resonated with the right audience. And before long, their sales figures started to climb as well. Both companies had successfully navigated the choppy waters of the market crash and emerged stronger than ever. And to make matters worse, their rivals weren't holding back either. General Motors jumped on the bandwagon, criticizing Buick's pricing strategy. They launched a new campaign, Drive a New Car Without Extra Cost, targeting cash-strapped customers. This innovative approach allowed customers to purchase new cars by trading in their old ones and paying the rest in monthly installments. It was a game changer. It enabled more people than ever before to afford a brand new car without having to pay the full price upfront. And guess what? It worked like magic. Sales figures skyrocketed and Dodge became the toast of the automotive industry. They accused Buick of selling inferior products at a low price, essentially calling them the cheap alternative. It was a clever tactic and it was effective. Soon enough, people were starting to associate Buick with shoddy workmanship and cut corners. To say that Buick was in trouble would be an understatement. They were hanging on by a thread. See, their rivals were not sitting idle. They were watching Buick's moves closely and plotting their comeback. In particular, the companies were itching for a fight: Dodge and General Motors. Sales of luxury cars were on the rise, indicating a growing demand for high-end vehicles among consumers. It was an unexpected turn of events, and these companies had to make a choice. Do they continue to drag each other down in a pointless fight or seize this opportunity to expand their reach? And they wouldn't stand idly by while Buick took the lead. No, they were ready to rumble. Their Model T didn't even have a standard steering wheel or brakes. As a result, sales started to dwindle. This revolutionary method of production allowed them to crank out 40 cars an hour. Now that's what I call efficiency. They hit back with a counterattack, highlighting the safety issues in Dodge's vehicles. It was a brutal blow, but Dodge was quick to retaliate. They brought out the big guns, accusing Buick of being too expensive for the average consumer. The battle lines were drawn and the war was on. In the end, neither side would back down. And so the fight dragged on, causing nothing but pain and suffering for everyone involved. But the effects of this innovation went far beyond the factory floor. It rippled through the whole organization, boosting morale, productivity, and profits. By 1918, Buick was selling 300,000 vehicles a year and the future looked brighter than ever. Yet despite these successes, a storm was brewing in Detroit and it threatened to engulf the entire industry. In fact, during the winter of 1913 to 1914, Dodge sold almost twice as many vehicles as Ford Motor Company, which was an unheard of feat at the time. All signs were pointing up until suddenly the sky turned gray. So let's get into it. It was affordable, reliable, and came with a 2-year warranty, something unheard of in the industry. These cars sold like hotcakes, and by 1914, Chevrolet was selling between 500 and 600 cars a day. The impact on the industry was big. The Ford Motor Company lost its title as the #1 automaker in the United States and General Motors took its place. But the story doesn't end there. The year is 1913 and General Motors is about to change the game for good or bad depending on who you ask. In 1911, General Motors entered the fray with a bang, introducing a new contender to the market, the Chevrolet. Just when it seemed that GM had reached the peak, in May 1915, they unveiled another car, one that would leave them reeling, the Buick, and boy, did it leave an impression. It had a 6-cylinder engine that provided smooth, powerful acceleration, not to mention a comfortable ride. Even better, it boasted features like a rear axle that was supported by springs for a smoother ride and tires that were made of a special rubber compound that increased their life expectancy. For those who owned one, this was a game changer. As if that wasn't enough, they also introduced a new manufacturing technique. And as the clouds of discontent gathered overhead, they found themselves facing an unprecedented challenge, one that could make or break their company. You see, the automotive industry was changing faster than a chameleon on a hot stone. And to stay ahead of the pack, they needed to innovate constantly. But innovation doesn't come cheap, and here's where things got tricky. They had a choice to make: either raise the prices of their vehicles to cover the cost of new developments or find ways to keep production costs down while still rolling out top-notch cars. The wrong move could mean the difference between success and bankruptcy. Buick decided to play their cards close to their chest, but other manufacturers weren't so secretive about their strategies. Well, the folks at Buick had a different plan up their sleeves. They were going to keep their prices low without sacrificing quality. But how? Well, it involved a bit of strategy and a lot of hard work. First, they streamlined their production process to reduce waste and increase efficiency. Then they started sourcing parts from multiple suppliers instead of relying on just one. This way, they could negotiate better prices and still get top-notch components. But perhaps the most important move they made was to invest in new technology. They implemented innovative solutions like centralized lubrication, which reduced the time spent on maintenance by an incredible 90%. These efforts paid off in a big way. Buick managed to keep their prices competitive while maintaining the quality of their vehicles. Customers loved it, and so did investors. However, in the cutthroat world of business, every move has an equal and opposite reaction. Dodge was first to throw a punch, but Buick wasn't about to go down without a fight. This is where the story takes a surprising twist. Despite the ongoing feud, both Dodge and General Motors noticed something strange. Let's start with Dodge. They were the first to make the move. So now the question arises, how did they manage to pull off this risky maneuver? Dodge knew that the key to survival lay in adapting to the changing times, but they weren't the only ones to make bold moves. General Motors wasn't sitting idle either. Despite the lingering effects of the Great Depression, the automotive industry was booming. And as the dust settled on the Great Depression, these companies stood tall, stronger, and more resilient than ever before.